Hello, I'm Adrian Ashton and welcome to the sixth and final tutorial video in this social enterprise specialism course. Hopefully by now you'll have gained a good appreciation of what social enterprise is actually about. We've thought about how we define it, what characterizes it, and also what's the point of doing a social enterprise in comparison with being a private business or setting up a new charity. We've also thought about some of the distinctiveness of social enterprise as well in terms of how it applies that identity through, their values, their ethics, and how they present that to the wider world, to different audiences, to support their marketing and promotion. We've thought about how they can raise finance in different ways to support them being set up or as to they grow and to help them develop and prosper. We've thought about other aspects of social enterprise as well in terms of how they're designed, how to approach thinking about creating one, from the need that they're being set up to create through to how they register themselves as a legal entity. The question now becomes, so what? Where do we go now? Well, hopefully, as we said at the start to this specialism, we've been using the template of the social business model canvas as a reference point, as a framework to look at different aspects of the design and concept of a social enterprise to inform and structure the content of these individual tutorial sessions. Hopefully by now, as you've been working through each tutorial, you'll have seen it as we've been working off each of those different sections of the canvas, thinking about customers and beneficiaries, thinking about how we're measuring our impact, who we're working with, how we stand out from the competition, and where money comes in and how we're spending money in broad terms. So the question now becomes, where do you go next? Well, what you've now got in your hands or in your notes in the form of that social business model canvas that you've been working on is the basis for a pitch. If you feel that this is now at a point where you want to take this further, you want to think, actually, yes, there's something here. How do I now take this further? How do I launch a social enterprise? How do I progress it from this thinking stage into the real world? Because there's a little secret that I've not really let you in on before now in terms of this thinking and planning stage of social enterprise and understanding it and actually being one. And the distinction is this. Up to this point, you've been in God mode. Up to this point, as you've researched and thought about the ways that social enterprise can operate and be structured and engage with people, you've been God. Your imagination, your understanding has determined how people will react and respond to it in different ways at different times. When a social enterprise is launched, God mode gets switched off. And suddenly people start reacting and responding in different and unpredicted ways. And that forces the social enterprise to start to make little compromises, to question its assumptions. But as we've gone through these previous tutorials, we've drawn out what those assumptions are within a social enterprise. What's shaped the way that it thinks, what's shaped the way that it acts, and the way that it presents itself to different communities of interest, different customers and investors and beneficiaries and people who it exists to support. So the social business model canvas is useful as a storyboard in terms of thinking about your initial pitch. If you want to go to a support program or to an investor or a funder to start things going that way. And within the tutorial notes to this section, we also have some links in terms of support programs, which at the time that these sessions were put together, which is the spring of 2020, those are, as a starting point, the Unlimited Foundation for Social Entrepreneurs and the School for Social Entrepreneurs, both of which are offering applications to funded support programs to help would-be social entrepreneurs and startup social enterprises start to try out and further define and develop their ideas for a social enterprise to take them out into the marketplace in the wider world. However, what you may have found as you've been working through these tutorials and thinking about these questions, and if you've been also working through the reflective questions and looking at some of the further reading and going down the rabbit holes that they'll have opened up to you, you may now be thinking about the canvas itself and going, this is a bit too limited. It doesn't really allow for the subtleties that I've started to think about. And if that's the case, that's fine, because as with any template, any format that's been created, it will never be perfect. It's been designed by other people to be as applicable as possible. It's not universally true. So within the additional notes to this tutorial section, we've included an alternate canvas called the Social Lean Canvas, which looks at these questions of what a social enterprise is, how it operates, what defines it in much more detail and from other perspectives, including the dimension of time, from where it is now at starting up to where it wants to be in the future, and how progressing through time will change the way that it needs to finance itself and offer services, and think about how it reports on its impact. Ultimately, a social enterprise is never finished. It's always adapting, it's always changing, it's evolving. And that's because the communities and the marketplaces and the world that it exists within are constantly changing as well. It has to adapt to remain relevant, to make sure that it can keep addressing the need that it's set up to meet in the best possible way. And as I've said, as we've gone through these initial set of short tutorials, we've introduced you to the concept of social enterprise, what they look like and how they can be created and developed. What we haven't done is looked at some of the more next level down detail of what happens in terms of running a social enterprise. How do you manage one? How do you grow it in the future? So again, in the tutorial notes, we put some prompts and some headings to think about growth strategies. What are the different ways that social enterprises can take over the world in a benevolent way, naturally, in the future? And then what are some of the other themes that you might want to start thinking about in terms of employing people, managing a team, bookkeeping, building partnerships, bidding for contracts? But those are all plus level things if you wanted to explore them. And they may be things that the university decides to build into additional course sessions in the future. But for now, there is a prompt as a starting point. Ultimately, as well, as we come to the end of this specialism, it's been designed to offer you an insight and a view to enrich your learning, to help you think about different options that are available to you as you progress out into the wider world. And part of that is to think about, well, this has been interesting, but how does it actually help me with my future employability? Because you may decide, and rightly so, for whatever reason, setting up a social enterprise or going into business for yourself is not for you. And I'm not going to argue with that. I'm not going to try and win you over. What I would say, though, is understanding about enterprise, and in particular, learning about social enterprise, exploring what it means to be a social entrepreneur, can have and does have direct benefits and links into increasing your future employability in whatever role or career path or industry you choose to work in or find yourself employed in the future. And in exploring some of that, we've also included the links to the research, to the examples, to the case studies, to the stories within the tutorial to help you think about and properly reflect on this specialism and how you can get the most out of it in applying it to your future. Thank you, though, for your interest in this specialism. Thank you for sticking through it. Hopefully you found parts of it parts enjoyable, challenging, surprising, and we've managed to keep you entertained and awake throughout. Please do let the university know if you've enjoyed it, what was good about it, what should there have been more of, so the university can best understand how it builds on these initial set of specialism offers in the future. But thank you for engaging with it. As Adrian Ashton, thank you again.